Dr. Michael McKubre, a brilliant electrochemist and lifelong experimentalist in low-energy nuclear reactions, passed away in August 2025 after a battle with cancer. A beloved scientist, mentor, and friend, he was known for his unwavering curiosity and integrity. As the former director of the Energy Research Center at SRI International, Dr. McKubre shaped our collective understanding of LENR through decades of patient, careful experimentation and thoughtful inquiry. Colleagues remember him not only as a sharp mind and talented researcher, but as a kind and generous spirit whose life reflected his belief that science should explore everything and serve humanity.
So the world needs a new primary energy source sometime. And nuclear is so much more attractive than chemical because the energy density of the nucleus is approximately 10 million times greater than the energy density of the electrons that orbit around the nucleus, which is chemistry. So electrons, chemistry, 1 electron volt. Nucleus, nuclear, 4 to 100 million electron volts, 4 to 100 million times larger energy density. So, and just think of what that means. Think of the volume of your gas tank in your car. Now I'm going to say you can do the same thing in that gas tank in a millionth of the space or in a millionth of the mass. It's a pin ahead.
Dr. McKubre's scientific journey began in a New Zealand classroom, where a high school chemistry teacher sparked a lifelong passion for understanding the physical world. He earned degrees in chemistry, physics, and geophysics in both New Zealand and the United States. Influenced by renowned electrochemist John Bockris, Dr. McKubre developed a unique manner of blending theory with experiment, a balance that would define his career. After completing his doctorate, McKubre pursued postdoctoral research at the University of Southampton, where he encountered Martin Fleischmann, whom he described as a genius, a word he didn't use lightly. This connection prepared him for the 1989 announcement by Fleischmann and Pons on cold fusion.
I entered the field mostly because I knew Martin. I knew him to be an extraordinarily inventive and imaginative guy, and I think had it been anybody except Martin, I wouldn't have bothered to go into the laboratory.
At SRI International, Dr. McKubre recognized the potential significance of Fleischmann and Pons' claims and convinced the Electric Power Research Institute to fund experiments investigating the phenomenon.
So because I knew Martin, I gave him a 50-50 chance of being right, and I diverted some of the funds from my sponsor at the Electric Power Research Institute to an experimental test of whether my old friend was crazy or not, actually. And as luck would have it, we discovered a thermal effect which could not be explained by chemistry or energy storage or any other known conventional process, and could only be nuclear because of its scale. That was in 1989, and I diverted my entire research activity and half of my research group and essentially all of my focus to pursuing that activity, and did so with more or less single focus for nearly 30 years.
As he conducted experiments, he insisted on methodical inquiry and on doing his own research. McKubre only accepted cold fusion as real after observing the effects himself, despite trusting and highly respecting Martin Fleischmann.
It wasn't until I saw the effect with my own eyes, in my own laboratory, under my own control, that I was prepared to accept that this was a real thing.
Through decades of research, McKubre became one of LENR's most respected voices. His experiments on the deuterium-palladium system explored the anomalous production of heat, always with care, skepticism, and intellectual honesty. His disciplined approach helped sustain LENR as a field of serious inquiry and inspired many to uphold the same standard of rigor. Of course, Michael McKubre was more than a careful experimentalist. He had a philosophical and curious attitude, and he managed to remain open and inquisitive while maintaining high standards. In an interview with Solid State Fusion Explored intern, PhD student, and social scientist Iman El-Sheikh, he said, "I do experiments without prejudice," explaining, "I try to learn from the results, and then go back and do another experiment." A self-described rebel and former hippie, he approached science with openness and independence, questioning assumptions and exploring alternatives others overlooked. He lamented mainstream closed-mindedness along with self-censorship and poor communication in the LENR community, urging transparency and collaboration. He believed LENR would only be accepted when it produced a simple, unarguable demonstration or a reproducible experiment.
I think it's time for condensed matter nuclear science, cold fusion, to be anomalous no more. I want it to be normal, interesting physical science. I don't want to curb and hold my tongue in meetings of learned physicists. We need an unmistakable and irrefutable scientific proof that nuclear effects take place in condensed matter by means, at rates, with products different from similar reactions occurring in free space. That is, condensed matter nuclear science is a real thing.
Friends and colleagues admired his humor, generosity, and quiet strength. He remained patient and grounded even when confronting skepticism, believing that truth emerges only through evidence.
There was an initiation period came as a surprise to a lot of the people who attempted immediately to reproduce the effect by levering themselves up from their desks where they had sat for the previous decade and wander into the laboratory and attempt to perform this experiment with a beaker of heavy water and a piece of palladium that they took out of a drawer, expecting to see the result more or less immediately. And when they didn't see the result, they gave up. The honest ones gave up and said, well, I didn't try hard enough. The other ones said, it doesn't work. Well, it didn't work, but then one should really not have expected it to work because they weren't doing what Martin Fleischmann, a preeminent electrochemist in the world at that time, and Stan Pons had already spent 5 years of their lives studying how to do. If it didn't work for them on the first day or in the first week, that really shouldn't have come as a tremendous surprise.
He had a strong sense of his mission and often reminded others that energy research was critical, as energy was the foundation of our way of life. For him, this meant that solving humanity's energy problem was among science's most significant responsibilities. Dr. McKubre's work helped shape the scientific foundations of LENR and inspired generations of researchers to tackle complex problems with seriousness and clarity of mind, as well as an undefeated sense of hope. His meticulous experiments, thoughtful skepticism, and steady voice of reason lent credibility to a controversial field. But he never stopped exploring the edges of our collective knowledge, and he understood the stakes of our inquiries, never shying away from confronting them. In retirement in New Zealand, he revisited past assumptions, critically re-examining ideas he once took for granted.
1989, I understood. Deuterium, palladium, got it. Nearly 30 years on, I know a lot less now than I knew then. And my windows of ignorance have opened wide.
His legacy endures in the laboratories he worked in, the colleagues he mentored, and the ethos he modeled. A blend of courage, curiosity, and compassion in the pursuit of truth. Those who knew Dr. McKubre will remember his humility, wisdom, steadfast spirit of inquiry, and his generosity. He lived these values in service, both in the lab and in his relationships with colleagues. To quote Marianne Macy, "The future of LENR is due to standing on the shoulders of giants, and Michael McKubre was one of them." Even in illness, he remained grateful for the chance to explore the mysteries that first captivated his imagination as a boy. We celebrate Dr. Michael McKubre for his discoveries and for the example he set, a life devoted to the pursuit of knowledge, integrity, and hope.